Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about demos. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, how do you as a software developer structure your demos so as to elicit more feedback from your users? Well, I don't do demos usually. Because I think that they are really just because if you're looking for user feedback in the demo, then you're, in my opinion, doing it wrong. A demo should be a way for you to sort of showcase, if you actually need to showcase the work that you have done. And usually the most valuable feedback doesn't come in at the demo. That is usually not the place to ask for feedback, because one part is that there's more people in the room, and it's sort of like asking a group of people, what do you think about this thing? It's only the people who have, I guess, certain people will give you feedback and some people will not. The best feedback you find in different ways, I've always found, than in the demo. I actually promote the idea of not having demos because I think there are more important ways to showcase and communicate how you're doing work. So the way that I usually do this, or the way I recommend doing it, is through newsletters. Now, why do I say that? Well, it's actually very simple. When you are a software team, you have to acknowledge one problem for you, which is that in some cases you will be able to make a change without it impacting someone. And in some cases you're going to have to let people know ahead of time that you are going to do something. So you have to have a think about deprecation and like how far ahead do you have to be in order to confidently make a change that someone else might be depending on, like breaking changes, etc., etc. Now, the reason why I think the newsletter is such an underappreciated thing is because one part is that you don't have to create like this meeting where a bunch of people only have one chance to take part of the thing that you have been working on. A newsletter is much more efficient. You just send out a mass email with like a small demo where you show like this is the new feature, this is how it works, etc., etc. And it doesn't have to be fancy. People can read it at in their own leisure. They can provide feedback in a very private, you can ask them for like thoughts, ideas, without having to put them in a situation where they have to schedule a meeting, they have to sit in that meeting, go through all the other stuff. Like, they can at their own convenience provide you that feedback. And at the same time, you're teaching your own team to communicate features and functionality. You're establishing a communication method to all your stakeholders where you can communicate things ahead of time as well in a very efficient way. And by simply doing this, you will actually find that your demos are probably going to be very effective, because you can pre-record them, you can add some like context to why you did a certain thing, you can actually present it. It's sort of, as from the presenting perspective, it's actually more efficient to do that if you're just going to do something where you showcase what you have done. But if you're looking for user feedback, on the other hand, well, that should ideally be a continuous sort of collaboration where, like, I'm a very big fan of the MVP strategy, minimum viable product, where the requirements for a feature should more than once involve the user of the feature. That is not something that always happens in some companies. You have a stakeholder, you have a PO, or you have someone in between who's sort of like just say, yeah, this is what we're going to build, and it's not really clear why you're building it, how it should affect the end user, etc., etc. So when you're looking for high quality feedback, the best thing I've always found is to have what I call a shadow session with the end user. And you can call that user story, like user mapping or user flows, etc., etc. Well, I call it shadowing, because all I'm really interested in when I'm building a feature for somebody else is to understand how the thing that I am doing, how is that fitting into their daily life, the thing that they need to be done. And the reason why this is so powerful is because it's going to tell you more to have someone show you how they're currently doing things and how the thing that you are building is going to affect that thing in some fashion than it is to build the thing and then ask what do you think about this. Because if you go about it this way, you can actually figure out whether you're building the right thing or if there's a better solution. And that's something that product owners and like stakeholders, they usually underestimate. There are very good reasons as to why the software developers are the smartest people in the room usually. They are trained to find problems and create solutions for those problems. You are not, usually. Or rather, it's more difficult for someone who is a non-technical person to figure out what's actually possible to do. So you are usually armed with less technical information when you are scoping and estimating work or like creating a feature. And by simply including this right software developers, you will actually find that there are possibilities that you may not be so aware of. And by doing that, your feedback actually comes early. And what's beautiful about this is that now that creates a very nice dynamic between the software developers, like they feel more accountable towards the end user because they have a face, they have a person, they have an actual understanding of what they're going to do or like how they're going to use this thing. And that is something that sticks with the software developers. Now there's meaning and context to what they are doing. And that actually does help a little bit with ownership as well for those of you who care about that sort of stuff. And then while you are building it, you can actually get early feedback on the thing. You can create something type of proof of concept type of thing, deploy that to a demo environment or sit down or something like that with the stakeholder, like who is actually going to use the thing, and then just ask them, how do you feel about this? Does this feel right? Does it not feel right? You do a much more personal, intimate thing with maybe one individual at a time or maybe a few individuals. And that feedback is most likely going to be endlessly more valuable. Especially since you're getting it early as well, as opposed to getting getting user feedback on things that could have been better when you've already done doing the work, right? So that's why I try to reverse it and try to go towards the newsletter approach for communicating when something has already been built, because I found that strategy to be more effective, and you can still get that sort of high level response back from people, and you can actually get some metrics as well to figure out how interested people are at large of the things that you are doing. I still think that there is a value for you to have a face-to-face and like do these sort of, I'm not saying demos, but like user feedback sessions with the team and so forth. But I've always found that this dynamic is much better, because it's nobody likes getting continue this bullshit that we have where we always have to have a sprint demo, we always have to have this is such a dumb idea. I really think so, because in many cases you're sort of struggling to find something to demo. You create a lot of unnecessary anxiety for the team to sort of find something meaningful to show. And on the other hand, when they sort of shoehorn something that they could demo, you're wasting a bunch of people's time by showing them, oh, we added this metric script, it's this line in the HTML file, congratulations, now there are metrics. You're pulling people away and scheduling a bunch of people and wasting a bunch of people's time by having a meeting about something that you're probably not going to get a lot of meaningful feedback on in the first place, when you could have just sent out an email explaining that this is the way it's working, etc., etc. So I like to make the analogy to, well, if you're going to create like a blog article, it's probably not great to put that in a tweet. And maybe a tweet of like just a few sentences is not the right thing to put on one of these like big articles that you're going to write for LinkedIn or some other thing. Like, you have to think about the content that you are providing and which format and medium is most appropriate to reach that end goal. So what I want you to take away from this is that I usually don't try to do demos all that much, because I believe that it's a better approach to get user feedback. Is usually best found by talking to the end consumer and having them being involved to a certain point with the specification, like what are you actually going to build. And that's why I do the shadow session, where I sit down with the people who are going to use the feature and just ask them, how do you use the system today, and just watch them work and look for things that I can see, which is either going to strengthen my belief that this is the right solution, or things that are a little bit unclear to me, and then I can ask them about it and then sort of show, well, this is what we're trying to build, does that make sense, and then pose a few questions related to the thing we're going to build. And that usually gives you a lot of positive good information. And then if when it comes to like showcasing what we have built, I like to use newsletters. I think it's a very effective way to getting information out there, getting a lot of getting without having to schedule people into meetings and things like that. And it's also a very good pattern to learn, because sometimes you actually need to communicate to people before you're going to ship something, and that's usually very efficient if you've already established a means of communication. Have a great day.